record. All right, Tony's coming in. All righty. All right. All right, guys. Uh, just a quick update for those of you who were not able to be at the GLOA in-person training. All of that stuff is going to be recorded. So you will be able to watch the financial presentation for the Niloa business, to give a sense. Like we have been really working hard for the last couple of years to sort of go from being a group of people that had a guy with a spreadsheet to actually looking like we know what we're doing as an organization. And we have made like yeoman's progress. So Trey Towery, who's one of our board members, is one of the big financial guys at the local Atlanta YMCA. He's the financial guy for all of the YMCAs. So he's really helped us out. Pete, our treasurer, is fantastic, but he gets money in, puts it in the account, and then he pays guys out, right? We didn't really have a handle on what was going on. So you can check that out. You'll see the amount of money that we spent. You'll get a sense of what our dues are like and what they're like in comparison to other places, and the things that you get out of that. So we are trying to be overly transparent in how we deal with our finances. Because, I mean, if you heard the assigners report, we do like 3,000 games. So we're talking about a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of opportunity to work games here. And so we want to make sure that everybody understands that this is really kind of an important thing to do. And we want to make sure that you all understand where that money is going and when we take money out of your check. So when you do a GHSA game, um, we take $6 out of your um, check. Okay. One goes to the association to help pay for arbiter and insurance and the website and huddle and like all of these other things that we use. And then we the standard practice in almost any sport that I have ever officiated or heard about is that you pay your assigners and you pay your treasurer, because they've got to spend the hours and hours and hours of filing all that stuff and doing the taxes and mailing out the checks and coordinating all that stuff. So, um, if you have any questions about any of that stuff, let me know. We did 3 presentations, how to move up quickly. We did a presentation, a sort of a you make the call presentation, and we did a sort of video review of 3-man mechanics, issues and good things that we've had in the association. So you can check out kind of the veteran training stuff. All of the presentations that were covered in the rookie class are on our YouTube page and are linked on our training plan document. So you can go to the training plan document and click on positioning. You can click on substitutions. You can click on counts. You can click on all that stuff and watch all of that. Um, and I think that would be really helpful. It's all you can always go back to it. Particularly the Savannah guys. I think if you were in the Savannah meeting, you probably just want to watch all of those videos, and then you can actually, hopefully, the weather will be better on the 25th, and you might really be able to get outside and actually do some kind of field training stuff. If you don't have to go over all those things. And of course, if you have any questions about any of those presentations, just let me know. I would be happy to answer any of those questions. And you of course can email Kaz, you can email Clyde, you can email any board member. Any of us would be happy to answer questions. Today we are going to do our presentations on personal fouls and technical fouls. So this is the fun stuff. We get to see people beating the hell out of each other and running around and whacking each other with sticks. I just remember the first time I saw a lacrosse game, I was in 8th grade, and I'd gone to public school in New York, and we definitely did not have lacrosse at public school in Yonkers, New York. And, I played baseball and I was sort of bored. And I saw my first lacrosse practice and I was like, this may be the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. You get to run around and whack people. So you are about to figure out the philosophy behind some very vaguely worded statements and stuff that's kind of all over the rule book. So I'm going to be very rules heavy tonight and talking about kind of what these things are. Now, before I do that, I want to let you know one thing. Um, we're going to do a presentation next class that is going to be what foul should I call? And that is really the important one because I don't want you guys to think if I see this, I have to do this. There are always options that you have, and there are lots of exceptions to what you should call. And then there's a bunch of very specific things that don't give you a lot of leeway. We call those the situations. So as you read through your rule book, you'll see, rule 4.5, situation A, and it lays out what's going on. That's the rules committee saying we want to take away your leeway in doing things. We want you to escalate this. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. And until you sort of get the big picture, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So we're going to do this. We're going to talk about sort of how you assess and, sort of the way I teach things is safety, advantage, disadvantage, obvious. You got to instantly categorize things into one of those three categories. And sometimes they double up. Um, and so keep that in mind, right? This is not, if he comes with the stick like this, it automatically is this. Okay. There's a lot of factors that kind of go into what we're going to call. Okay. All right. Let's get started. Let me share my screen. And we will start with personal fouls. Oh, wait, I want to do it where I'm not doing my own recording. All right, slideshow, play narration. There we go. Okay. All right. Here we are. We are talking about personal fouls. I will tell you that these are the big ones, right? These are fouls that kind of jump off the page at you. And, in this case, your grandmother who's never seen a lacrosse game knows that this is a foul. Okay. Some of these are pretty easy, and some of these are a bit more difficult to kind of figure out. All right. Um, All right. There are, clearly body checking is allowed in lacrosse. And so you see this hit on the left here. This is a college game. This is a big time game. Um, and, we got, Cornell Rutgers here. That is as clean of a hit as you can have in college lacrosse, right? A player in possession or within 5 yards of a loose ball from the front or side, shoulder to the waist, two hands on the cross. Doesn't lead with the head. That's going to be something completely different. But physical play is allowed. Um, you're also going to see a lot of contact that sort of looks like this. Guys just bodying up each other. And so we run the gamut. You're allowed to shove guys away from you within a loose ball. So body checking is not always you're trying to kill a guy. Body checking is you're sort of moving a guy out of the way. And so these sort of one-on-one ground ball drills are a pretty classic example of that kind of contact. So key thing, in possession, within 5 yards of a loose ball, right? So carrying, cradling, passing, shooting. Let's remember that definition. From the front or side, shoulder to the waist, two hands on the cross. Here is a pretty good example of a legal body check. So we have an outlet pass here. Green's going to pass it up. Right. We got a little contact on the back. We've got two guys that are kind of standing up, bumping into each other. Nobody falls down. This is a high level game between two skilled teams. Um, that's an important factor to take into account. Are you going to be, what kind of physical contact are you going to allow? Why am I kind of freezing up here? Um, Now, youth body checking rules, right? When we're dealing with these guys, it's a different deal. At the youngest levels, there's no body checking at all. Think kind of little kids basketball, okay? Um, Once you get to 10-year-olds, you're starting to look at allowing body checks, but we have a thing we're not allowed to do, which is called a takeout check. You are not allowed to put somebody on their ass. If you put somebody on your ass, it's a flag, right? At this level, the rules committee really wants to develop skills. We want to develop the stick skills and the footwork, not me mongo, me take everybody out. You have to be in an upright position. Again, both hands on the cross. And at the youth level, on their feet throughout contact. You cannot launch yourself at somebody in a youth game. That's not necessarily illegal in a high school game. Um, so um, you, so this is talking about legal contact at youth level again. Legal holds, and we will talk about this. Yes, it is legal to hold a player in lacrosse. You just have to be within 5 yards of a loose ball. Legal pushes, you are allowed to push from the front. Think man ball. The man ball drill is sort of what we saw earlier, where instead of having one on one, you have two on one. And one guy calls man and he blocks the opponent from getting to the ball, and then your partner picks up the ball, and now we have possession, and so you can't body check him anymore, and so you release, you let him go. Um, you can box out, defensive positioning to redirect an opponent. The defender is entitled to space just as the offensive player is entitled to space. So if you kind of ride a guy out, that's not in and of itself illegal. And then, of course, you have incidental contact. Guys trip on each other's feet as they're going for a ball. Now, you're allowed to check with the cross in possession or within 5 yards of a loose ball in an attempt to dislodge the ball. It clearly states this in the rules. If you are attempting and have access to the ball with your cross, you get a little more leeway as to what happens when there's contact that by in the literal definition of the rule. For example, you might bop the head, you might make contact to the shoulder, you might make a little contact to the back. That is not automatically a slash. But the key thing I want you to focus on with cross contact is, are you really trying to get to the ball, right? Is there a possibility that you're going to dislodge the ball from this player's cross? The thing in high school that I really need to stress is, if your gloved hand is on the cross, it is considered part of the cross. And at that point, I don't care how hard somebody's hitting that bottom hand, right? You're not going to throw a flag if you were hitting the cross really hard. You're definitely not going to throw a flag if it's doing this. Am I doing my timings? Hold on one sec. Let me do this. Let me click this off. So, again, at the youth level for stick checking, you can hit on the cross or the gloved hand in possession or within 3 yards. Remember, with youth, it's not 5 yards, it's 3 yards. We've shrunken the scrimmage area where we allow loose ball contact and body checking and all that kind of stuff. You were allowed to lift the player's cross. Basically, you hit the bottom of the cross or the hand in an attempt to disrupt a throwing motion or dislodge the ball. You can poke at that player's stick. and try to jar the ball loose. Or you can have a downward check, but that check cannot be initiated from above the shoulders from U12 on down. So, given that, that's what's allowed. Let's talk about personal fouls. These are fouls of a serious nature. Player safety and conduct are what we are focused on. Okay. Play that is unnecessarily rough, dangerous, or unsportsmanlike. So if you don't meet the definition of unnecessarily rough, dangerous, or unsportsmanlike, we are probably talking about a technical foul. Now, a personal foul will suspend you from the game for 1, 2, or 3 minutes. And that is at the discretion of the official for the most part. Like I said, there are certain situations in play here where you don't have the option of a 1 minute or you don't have the option of a 2 minute. Um, and so you need to be aware of those situations. The focus here is safety. Safety never takes a holiday. Okay. Slash, cross check, tripping, illegal body check, targeting, head and neck, right? Slash, cross check, tripping, illegal body check. If you've watched a hockey game, you know what I'm talking about. Um, Targeting is slightly different. We'll get to that. That's sort of a non-lacrosse play and an attempt to injure. Head and neck, like every sport in the country, we have tried to address the issue of concussions. And so we have these new tools in our toolbox to call fouls on play that we think is unnecessarily rough and dangerous. Unsportsmanlike conduct, we're talking about sportsmanship. And you've got illegal cross or equipment. So your cross doesn't meet the specifications that we talked about in our cross and equipment presentation. It's pinched, it's too short, it's the deep pocket, all of those things. Or you're not wearing proper equipment. And then we have an ejection foul, which can be for a number of things or for just what the rule book refers to as flagrant misconduct, right? And that's really up to the discretion of the official. So let's talk here about cross checks. Um, that is a cross check. You are using the part of the cross between your hands essentially as a weapon. And the phrases that are really important for you to understand are um, thrusting away, extending from the body, and running at a player. It needs to be vicious or deliberate. Simply making contact with the part of the cross that is between your hands is not a cross check. And you can push a guy with it. That's different than viciously or deliberately using the cross as a weapon. When we get to technical fouls, we will talk about what is in the rule book that is called the cross check hold. And that is legal under certain circumstances. Okay. So let's look at this one again. Um, right? We run at the guy with the cross extended, and boom, we just hammer him. You do this game long enough, you see these coming from a million miles away. Okay. So it's important that, you watch game film like this, you watch games so that you start to get a sense of, oh, okay, are they going to throw a flag here? And then maybe you can go ask the crew, like, hey, why didn't you call that play in the third quarter? Um, Here is another pretty classic example of a cross check. Yep, and here we go. Watch number 8. Boom. And he's right at the shoulders, right? So here's an example of, do we want to go with the cross check? Do we want to potentially go head and neck, right? You always have options, but your grandmother who's never seen a lacrosse game knows this is, I mean, again, fouls that jump off the page at you.
Right. Couldn't that also be called an illegal body check since he was clearly without the ball? The pass had already.
Um, I don't know how clearly he is without the ball. Let me see. I mean, it's right after he passes, right? So he's just given up the ball and the person he passes to is maybe 6 yards away. So to me, it's not an illegal body check because the ball was close enough, right? Remember, if he passes it, that ball can still be within 5 yards of him because it's a loose ball in flight.
Got it.
So, so we can clearly sort of move that off the table. But you see him coming like this, and your all your alarm bells should be going off for a cross check. Um, Now, the other thing that you can sort of do with a cross is called slashing. You can swing the cross at an opponent's body or cross with deliberate viciousness or reckless abandon, right? That's what it says in the rule book. It references a definite blow or a strike. And we're talking about striking a player in the face, the groin, the neck, the chest, the back, the head, the legs. I could easily add to this presentation. So let's watch Mr. Mann here. So that is clearly a slash, right? The only thing that you are given 100% free all go, no problem on is if you hit the opponent's cross or the gloved hand touching the cross. Okay. So again, we're not looking for simply contact. We are looking for deliberate viciousness, reckless abandon, blow or strike. And it's got to hit some part of the body. Okay. That is not the cross or the gloved hand. Um, but contact alone is not enough to call this. And we're going to do this is going to be our signal for cross check or for slash. And this is going to be our signal for cross check. Do any of you guys do basketball? Anybody officiate basketball? Well, if you do, oftentimes a push in basketball is this. And if you're trying to call a push in lacrosse, that's a 30-second penalty. This is a 1, 2, or 3 minute cross check. So that's one of those things where guys can kind of easily confuse the table as to what's going on. So you, again, get in the book and learn the signals. Um, Here is a big slash to that special area. So watch number 30 here. Good defense, right? And he goes for the check and gets him right in the nuts. Okay. Um, we want to make sure we get that. Okay. When the player goes down and is, all that stuff, we have to see that, right? So the trail official, because if you watch, this is a 3-man game, but if you watch this, it's actually really hard for the single side official on the far side there to see where that contact is, right? So it's probably the trail official or the lead official who might even get this foul. Here's another pretty classic example, like right in the knee. And one of those things is if you don't know who the number of the player is who committed a foul, in this case, this guy has no numbers on him. Um, Look for the person that feels sad or that feels angry, because those are the people that are very much involved in what just went down, right? Um, right. Here is another example. We actually have 2 flags on this play. So that was right in the gut, and then that's another one right in the gut. So in this case, we're going to have 2 slashes on number 9. So he's going to be in the box for 2 minutes. Okay. Um, you got to be careful though. Okay. Again, in order for this foul to be called, it says in the rule book that contact is not necessary. I have never called a slash on somebody in a high school or college game where they did not make contact. In a Tiny Tots versus the Mighty Mites game, I have called for somebody who was definitely trying to slash somebody and just happened to miss. So watch this play right here. Look at number 2, white 2. He's going to slide. You get that? That's right to the gloved hand, and then he misses the player. So you got to be watching where that contact is. Now, again, this is a high level. I believe this is a high school game. And this is high level, right? That's a hard check to the gloved hand. That's one of the exceptions to the slashing rule because that's considered part of the cross. Now, here are the three exceptions to a player that has been told that or you think might have committed a slash. If you are scooping up a loose ball and as your stick comes up, you catch somebody in the knee or in the face, that is an exception to the slashing rule. Now, if in your opinion it is intentional and you're trying to injure the player, um, this exception does not give you a license to foul. But to be honest, I've never seen that happen. Passing. Um, you are making a pass and you make contact with the defender who's right in front of you, who's sliding to you. That is an exception to the passing rule. Now, I have seen goalies pretend to be passing to somebody and just hammer the person in front of them. And we'll see examples of that when we do crease play. Shooting is the other exception. If you are taking a shot and the defender is closing and you come down on their head, that is an exception to the slashing rule. All right, here's another example of gloved hand on the cross. Um, so he comes down with an ice pick check and gets a really nice takeaway here, right? That being said, Rule 573, situation B. A defensive player may not repeatedly strike the gloved hand of opponent if they do not have reasonable access to a player's cross and make no attempt to dislodge the ball. So look at the player on the left-hand side. Oftentimes you will see a player put his arm out. They are not allowed to grab a defender's stick or push a defender's stick away, but they can use that to essentially block the cross from their opponent's cross from getting to their cross, right? You just put it out like a shield. You can't just whack away on the gloved hand. You can't just whack away if you are really not trying to dislodge the ball. Okay. Contact with the cross. Contact alone is not enough. So look on the left-hand side here. Again, he gets the cross. So let's take a look at this. He comes up, he's lifting up here. He makes contact with the head of the cross and flips it out of Red's hand. But he does make contact with the back. In this case, that contact to the back is not enough for me to call a slash. He got access to the cross, and that's not bad enough that I'm thinking, okay, we got to call this a slash. Let's look at this example. That we have no access to the cross, and we come across and get him right in the neck and the head. Okay. So both are technically illegal. We have contact to the back here. We have contact to the neck and shoulder and head here. But on the left-hand side, it's not enough for me. A lot of what you guys will hear when you go out to do a lacrosse game in your pregame is officials will say the first flag really needs to be something. Because your first slash is where you set the bar for the rest of the game. And if you call this on the left a slash, any slight contact to a player is going to be a flag. And in a high level game, you're going to be bombing a lot of flags. Tony, what do you got?
Oh, my bad. That was inadvertent. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good. So again, this is a judgment call. And the more film you watch and the more games you watch and the more understanding you have about the difference between high level play and lower level play, between high school and youth, you will start to see that there really is a pretty wide spectrum of what you might allow. Now, before you say to yourself, well, Greg doesn't love the children and Greg doesn't care about the safety of the children, you can't have contact to the head and not call it, a big time penalty. 5-4-2 situation. A1 attempts to check B1's cross, but instead A1's cross makes slight contact with B1's head or neck. B strikes B1's head or neck area. In A, no foul. This is a brush. We do not wear helmets and gloves and shoulder pads because we think contact is going to occur. We wear helmets and shoulder pads and gloves because we know contact is going to occur. And not all contact is a penalty. Now in B, we're using the word strike. That's a slash. And if it was excessive, violent, or uncontrolled, we can now go up to a 2-minute contact to the head and neck, potentially a 3-minute contact to the head and neck, right? We have options. So you have to understand what you are allowing in a game based on the level of play and the rules that you are officiating under. One-handed checks are legal at the high school level. So you'll see a rapid series of checks right here. Boom, boom, right? They are illegal in USA lacrosse rules at U10 and below. Now, it's important that you check with the league or the tournament to see if they have made a modification. In a lot of these tournaments and in a lot of these fall leagues, they make modifications because they want kids to do one-handed checks, right? The philosophy behind not allowing that is you want to teach a kid how to play good defense, right? But that's not for me to decide. You have to know what the league or the tournament is going to allow. If they're just playing USA lacrosse rules and they don't say anything about it, it means you are not allowed to do a one-handed check at the youth level, U10 and below. But they are legal at the high school level, right? Tripping. Tripping is probably the worst written rule in all of sports. It makes me laugh every time. Obstructing an opponent at or below the waist with the cross, hands, feet, or arms by any positive primary action if the obstructing player is on his feet, or secondary action if not. I have absolutely no idea what positive primary action is, and it's been in there for 30 years at least. I don't know what secondary action means, but I do know what a trip seems to look like, okay? In this case, this player has thrown his foot out and has tripped the foot of the player, and it looks like he's done it on purpose. That is the most common sense definition of a trip that you can get. But we get into some hazy areas when there are all other options of what we can do. And of course, there are exceptions. So here is an example. I think we can all agree that this is a trip, right? It's very clear that number 44 has tripped number 5. That is a 1-minute releasable penalty. So cross-check, releasable penalty. Slash, releasable penalty. Trip, releasable penalty. You do not have the option of saying it is a non-releasable penalty. Okay, so we can't have a 3-minute non-releasable slash. That's not a thing. Okay. Here's another really good example of tripping. Right? So if you see, watch the downward check will catch the foot of the white player. Clearly a trip, the most common sense definition that you could come up with. Now, here are the exceptions. Tripping over your own cross. If you get checked and your stick goes into the ground and you sort of go flying over the top of it, it's a thing. Or it stops and you sort of fall over your own cross, that's on you. Okay. A legal check causing a player to fall over his own cross, right? And I'll show you some examples of this. This is my personal favorite one. falling over the leg of a stationary defender. If you've got a guy and it's clear that you are doing a one-on-one, you're dodging against one guy and he's just standing there, and you run into him and you fall over his feet or legs, he hasn't moved. He's entitled to that space. There's no positive primary action. He just stood there. And if you make contact with him and go down, that's on you. I'm not bailing you out with a flag because it says in the exceptions that falling over the leg of a stationary defender is not a foul. Now, falling over the leg of a moving defender, that can be a different thing. And that's where your judgment really comes into it. The final exception is tripping over the cross of a player attempting to scoop a loose ball. So here we have two things dealing with loose balls. If you go to scoop it and somebody else comes running in and trips over your cross, that's nothing. It's one of the exceptions to the tripping rule. So watch this. This is a good check and a player trips over his own cross. Good check and he goes down. Now he gets back up and he gets the ball, but let's see that again. So we're coming together. There's the check. That is a good check, right on the hands, right on the cross. And their feet don't get caught. There's no incidental contact. We do not have contact from behind. This is clearly contact from the side. And he goes down. That's an example of a legal check that leads to a player falling to the ground. Okay. So we talked at the beginning of this presentation about a legal body check. Let's talk about an illegal body check, not within 5 yards, right? Jesse, this is what you brought up earlier. Are we within 5 yards of a loose ball? From behind, below the waist, or above the shoulders, one hand on the cross. Avoidable or late, okay? Opponent has any part of his body other than his feet on the ground. So if your hand's on the ground, your knees on the ground, you're lying on the ground, you are not allowed to be body checked. You can still play. You can try to pick the ball up. You can take a shot if your both knees are on the ground. That's not illegal. Other people can play your cross. They simply cannot body check you. So let's watch this guy right here. That is clearly from behind, avoidable or late, not within 5 yards of a loose ball. Right? So shots away. And it's a good shot. This is not a pass. This is a shot. So the ball is clearly away, and we get him right in the back. Now, this rule was put into lacrosse in the sort of mid to late 80s. It's called unnecessary roughness. It's a rule for excessively violent holding and pushing, avoidable or late contact, deliberate and excessive violent act with body or cross. So that's pretty vague. A punching blow. So a lot of players will have two hands on the cross and they will hammer a guy, essentially punching him but holding the cross. You're not allowed to do that. You can push a guy, but you cannot punch him with your hand on your cross. Deliberate or excessive contact with a player setting a screen. You have to see the player has set a screen for you to be called for this. So if you are totally focused on your own person you're defending and you hammer into a guy who's setting a screen, we need to know that you saw it coming. And to be honest, I've been doing this long enough. That's kind of what I'm looking for when I see a screen get set, because I'm watching the screener. Are they doing what they need to do as a screener, and what's that contact going to look like? The big change and the big sort of philosophical change that happened in the late 80s, early 90s was all of this may include a legal check. So think about that really big hit in the Cornell Rutgers game. You could call that unnecessary roughness. It met the definition of a check, a body check that was, by rule, it was fine, but in the judgment of the official, it was unnecessary. And again, this is where we get into what's the level of game, what's the physical ability of the players, what is the temperature of the game? Is it chippy? Is it a blowout and people are trying to kill each other? Is it really sloppy and there's been a lot of violent play and you are like, nope, we're just going to make all that go away. These are the things you have to keep in mind while you're watching unnecessary roughness. So here's a pretty clear example um, of an absolutely brutal hit, right? Now, think about deliberate, excessively violent. What are the factors we're going to look at here? He comes from a distance. He launches himself head first, right? And we might have head-to-head contact here, right? So this is a foul that really jumps off the page. Look, you're going to watch games on TV, college games, where every hit's like this. This is not a rule um, uh, that is used a lot at that level. And there's no, we're about to get into it, but there's no defenseless player rule in college. That is a really high level of play. You're going to allow much more physical play. At the youth level, this is an ejection. To me, this might be a 1 minute releasable foul if you don't think there's helmet to helmet contact. But you could have a 1 minute unnecessary roughness releasable foul here. All right, checks involving the head and neck. Players shall not initiate excessive, violent, or uncontrolled. Again, think of the wording that's in the book. Excessive, violent, uncontrolled. We are not simply talking contact. We are talking really big, nasty contact to call this penalty. This can be called on the offense or the defense because this is now where sort of spearing lives. Okay, so if you use your head to hit another player, we can call spearing it. And this is a check involving the head and neck. It just so happens to involve your head and neck if you're the offender. We have two ways to adjudicate this in high school now, and it mirrors what the college rule is. Indirect contact is a good lacrosse play that sort of slid up into the head and neck area. Okay. And that's a 1 minute non-releasable foul. But if you have direct contact, like there's nothing that you hit that would have been legal and you just come slamming into the head or neck, that can be a 2 or 3 minute non-releasable foul. Okay. With the possibility of an ejection. Now, just because the check starts in an area that you don't necessarily think would be that terrible, but violently slides up into the head or neck area, that can also be a multi-minute foul, right? So you can't get away with it if it starts okay, but then terribly finishes. Okay, let's look at this example right here. Here we have 99 running down the field, and here's the important part. Coaches will yell, he lowered his head, he lowered his head. I don't care that he lowered his head. I care how violent was the contact and where did that contact occur. You can lower your head and run into somebody and have it not be particularly violent. It's just two guys playing lacrosse. So what happens here, however, is we violently hit somebody in the head, knocking them to the ground. That is excessive, violent, and uncontrolled, right? So to me, I'm looking at a 3 minute possible ejection with this foul. This is a foul that we have to, this is a play that we've got to get out of the game. Okay. This is big enough for me where I'm seriously thinking we're going home here. Okay. Here's an example of cross check to the head that starts. Yeah, but it starts, it's a little bit of a cross check hold, and it just slides up into the head or neck area. This is a classic 1 minute indirect contact to the head. You got to call this, right? But that's violent enough that we're going to get a flag, right? We're not going to let that go. Um, I'm going to play this through. I'll narrate a little bit, and then we'll watch the end. So all of this contact is legal, right? That's kind of what I mean by playing defense between the stick. He pushes him from the front. That's a legal play. He ear holes this kid, right? Now, both players are dipping their head. I think White is probably trying to go play the ball. And Red, who's much taller than White, is trying to get low enough to make a hit. I don't have, other than this clip, I don't have any other context to the game. I'm just reading into the situation what I think is going on here. And this is a brutal hit to the head, right? Intention is irrelevant. Whether he meant to hit him or not is irrelevant. Now, if I think he meant to do injury to him, we have something for that. Okay. But this is a really brutal hit. Now, you will hear the official yell, flag down. When you throw your flag in lacrosse, and we'll talk about this next class, you have to yell flag down as loud as you can because you want everybody to know that we have just entered a special situation called a flag down slow whistle, or just a flag down, right? A penalty has been called. And so you throw your flag as high into the air as you can, straight up in the air, and you're going to yell flag down. Now, you'll also hear the mom yelling, he's down, he's down, he's down. We want to kill this play immediately because he is within 5 yards of the play and the ball. He's in the scrimmage area. We have an injured player. We're going to kill this play immediately. All right. If you get a hit like this, this is a play where you are going to want to immediately get in touch with your assigner, okay? And you are going to let them know that you had a brutal hit. You are going to let them know, right, that an ambulance was called, okay? And you are going to let them know that what the penalty was that you assessed. I think the most important thing you need to learn from an experience like this, and it's a horrible experience. Whether it's a kid knee blows out because he twists it wrong in the grass, whether it's a concussion, whether it's a broken arm, right? Do not assess the penalty until all of this has taken care of itself. That kid's not coming back into the game, which makes me think I don't think number 59 Red is going to be in the game anymore. I think this is a 3-minute ejection foul. Okay. But understand the position of assigners. If you're an assigner, you've got 50 games going on in a night. And at the end of every game, a bunch of parents, a bunch of coaches, and a bunch of athletic directors are calling them to complain about the job that we did. And somebody, if not multiple people, are going to call for a hit like this. You need to give your assigner a heads up as to what happened. Note the time on the clock so that when we get the film, we can go find that hit. But this is a phone call that needs to be made as soon as you get in your car and the game's over. In this case, you might be here for 30, 40 minutes waiting for the ambulance, waiting for all of that. Somebody should go get a phone and give a heads up to the assigner. Okay. And we'll talk about that in sort of officials' responsibilities. The unnecessary roughness sort of became contact to the head and neck, and then it emerged into what we call checking a defenseless player. And there are a couple of definitions, right? Hitting a player from the blind side. If they have no idea the hit is coming, we got to have a flag. If it is a violent, excessive contact, just making contact with somebody from the blind side is playing lacrosse. Okay. Um, Playing with the head down, playing a loose ball, that was what we just saw. So we have either contact to the head or neck in the previous play, or if you think that kid was going for the ball, you can say you have checked a defenseless player. Um, I'll show you an example of a buddy pass, but think about a wide receiver going over the middle in the NFL, and he's got his arms out, and that safety comes and just obliterates him. Okay. Um, it doesn't matter that you can snap your head around and see it coming. If you are laid out like that and it's violent, vicious contact, we got to have a flag. On the ground is considered to be in a defenseless position. Um, and engaged in a face-off. I will tell you this, in the late, uh, early to mid 80s, my job as a wing guy on the face-off was to go ear hole the guy engaged in the face-off from the other team. And what was happening is that guy kept getting a concussion or a broken shoulder. And if you take your face-off guy out of the equation, it's really tough to win lacrosse games. Usually there's the number one face-off guy, and then there's some substantial drop-off after that. And possessions are what win you lacrosse games. That gives you more opportunities to score. And coaches said, I want that hit to be illegal. And it wasn't in the early 80s. It was from the side, it was shoulder to the waist. It didn't matter that they were engaged. It didn't matter that they were in a defenseless position. And the coaches said, you have to make an exception. We've got to make this illegal. It's hurting our game. And so they came up with unnecessary roughness, and it has sort of grown and morphed into these various rules that we're talking about. Again, checking a defenseless player, if it is vicious and violent and nasty enough, you can eject that player. Right. Now, I love I'm going to play this again. Head down, scooping a ball. Now, the parent is yelling, are you serious? Are you going to allow this? I think the most important thing that we need to understand about being an official is we do not control the game. We react to what is happening and we attempt to manage the game. Controlling and managing are very different things. And there are a lot of lacrosse games out there that I would very much have loved to control. Okay. But the only way I do it is I react to something that you have done, either with a whistle or a flag. And it's just sometimes games get out of hand and it's really hard to get them under control. And it takes 2 or 3 really experienced officials to do that. And there are some games that you just got to work your way through. And if you got to throw a zillion flags, you got to throw a zillion flags, and start ejecting people. If you get 5 minutes of personal fouls, you're disqualified. So not the technical stuff. You get disqualified. So here's another really good example. He turns around, and here comes the flag. Right? So again, this is checking a defenseless player. Now, right here, we got an official off to the right. I don't know if number 7 is taunting him or asking him if he's okay. Right? Just seeing this, I don't know what's happening, but I really like that this official is right there. Okay? More examples. Right? You see a hit like that, and that flag should be flying out of your hands. Here's another one. Right? He does not see it coming. 30 comes from distance, head down, right into him. Vicious, violent, deliberate. Checks all the boxes. Right? So in these cases, we cannot call this just an illegal body check because it meets the definition of a defenseless player. And then here's an example of a buddy pass. So he's reaching out to get it. Again, that check in and of itself, he doesn't hit him with the head. He hits him from the side, maybe even a little to the front. But that is a brutal, brutal hit. And he is trying to get the ball. He doesn't have time to turn his head. That's a buddy pass right there. In the middle of the field here, towards the left here, number 9 is going to get kind of blindsided. Now, that's a flag. We've got a flag here from the trail official, right? It's not the worst hit I've seen, but it's pretty big. And again, it meets that definition of a blindside hit. Finishes high, comes right at him. Punching blow. I mean, you got all sorts of things you can call here, but that has to be a flag. Now, targeting is a thing of its own making, right? You may not intentionally target the head or neck of a player for the purpose of making violent contact. Here, we're now talking about intent. Are you playing lacrosse or are you trying to hurt your opponent? And this is a automatic 3-minute, if not an ejection. So here's the best example that I have found. This is from a USA Lacrosse thing years ago. Look at 36 green. The ball is 10 yards away. The defender has turned his head to follow what's happening with the ball, and 38's pissed off that he did something wrong or 21's not letting him score. And so he just goes in and cross-checks him in the back of the head. Right, so let's go back here. All right, the ball's at X. The ball's behind the cage, and 36 is just laying out this defenseman. To me, this is an ejection. He's not playing lacrosse. He's not trying to get the ball. He's not trying to pass the ball. He's not trying to shoot the ball. He's not trying to set a screen. He's trying to injure his opponent. And then finally, so a little bit of a hold there. They get right. So you see the hold right in there. That's the hold. Probably have a flag down. And then this is all fine. We're within 5 yards of a loose ball. Red gets it, right? And then we get a little check to the back. This is clearly an ejection. We're not playing lacrosse here. This is an ejection. You have unsportsmanlike conduct, what we call the full bird. To get a non-releasable unsportsmanlike conduct is arguing with or maligning the official. If you want to tell me that my call sucks, that's fine. I'm a New Yorker. I have a fairly high bar for you yelling at me. Telling me that I'm getting paid to do this by the other team or that I'm taking bribes or, or insulting me, that's a different thing. threatening, profane, or obscene language or gestures. You're the mayor of F-bombville. Taunting, calling undue attention to oneself. Throwing a cross at the ball player or coach or official. Or any other act considered unsportsmanlike by the officials, what we call flagrant misconduct. So watch the white player running off the field here, right? To me, I'm ejecting that player. That's a 3-minute unsports. That's not a lacrosse play again, right? This is a classic example. If there are some leeway here, right? At the higher level games, you're going to get players swearing and cursing. If I'm the only one who can hear it, I'm going to say something to you, right? Sometimes it's the goalie yelling at his midfielders because they're not playing defense, right? Um, if anybody else can hear it in the stands or nearby, you got to throw a flag for an F-bomb. And too unsportsmanlike conduct, and you are ejected from the game. And in Georgia, if you're ejected from the game, you sit for the next 2 contests. If you are disqualified, you get 5 minutes of personal fouls. You just sit the next game. So there are like serious consequences for fouling out or getting ejected. Taunting, I'll briefly talk about this. To me, that's taunting, what number 13 is. If you focus on your own team and fans and you are celebrating, I have no problem with that, right? I don't even care if it's choreographed. When you make the opponent the focus of your celebration, then I'm going to throw a flag. Okay. It is imperative, like we talked about with positioning, that if there are mixed colors standing next to each other and the ball's dead, you have got to be in close proximity, especially after goals and especially after momentum swinging plays. You've got to get in there to make sure that you can be like, hey, fellas, you go that way and you go that way. I would rather prevent shenanigans than have to flag shenanigans. So letting players know that you're around usually goes a long way to having them start to behave appropriately. But there's not, you got to do what you got to do, right? And this official is doing a great job. I'm pretty sure we're ejecting this player, and he cold cocks this kid. There is an official standing next to him. So let's show it again. We are running this player off. I know the video is terrible, but I wanted to save this. I've used this for years. And he just cold cocks this kid. Right? So again, that's about as much control as you have over a lacrosse game. You are personally escorting a player off the field. Okay? Throwing the cross, you cannot throw the cross at a player, the ball, or other game personnel. It's a 1 to 3 minute non-releasable penalty. So this guy throws his stick into the goal. That's not a goal. We're killing it immediately. That is a foul. Okay. And the official rightly comes in and says no. This play happened. This is Georgia Tech playing South Carolina in the MCLA semifinals like 2 years ago.
The officials come together if they're not sure. That one picked off coming the other direction. Wow. I believe that's a flag. And we'll see what the call is here. Smart play. Yeah, he gets gonna get the flag down here, but that one was absolutely going in the goal.
Right. So watch what the goalie did. Once he realizes his clear is over, and this guy's just trying to flip it over the goalie's head, he throws his cross up into the air. He actually gets the ball, so I give him credit, but that is a 1 minute non-releasable penalty. And just so we're clear, in a high school game, the goalie serves the penalty. You allow a reasonable amount of time if they have to switch equipment or do anything like that, because you have to have a legally equipped goalkeeper. But the goalie goes into the penalty box. Okay. In a youth game, it may be acceptable to put the in-home in if they only have one goalie. But in a high school game, the goalie is serving the penalty. Releasable unsportsmanlike, committing the same technical foul. You often see this when a team's getting beaten on the face-off and they're just jumping early every single time. You can put them in for a minute, but it's not full time. It's not locked in. Okay. And the way non-releasable works is if you are put in the penalty box and it's releasable and the offended team scores a goal, all releasable penalties are wiped out. If you are put in the box and it's a non-releasable penalty, the goal counts and we go have a man down face-off. You have to be in the box until your penalty time expires. So a non-releasable penalty, particularly a 3-minute one, is a really big deal. Okay. Substitute deliberately failing to comply with the rules for entering the field to play. You get a kid who's like, buddy, you don't have a mouthpiece. Buddy, you don't have a mouthpiece. And he comes on the field the third time, I'm throwing a flag and I'm putting him in the box. Deliberately failing to return immediately to the field, you run out of bounds and you like run on the other side of the bench and then you come back in. I've had that happen once in a youth game. It was hilarious. Second violation, no defensive player other than a properly equipped goalkeeper can enter the player's own crease with the intent of blocking a shot or acting as a goalkeeper. The first time that happens, it's a 30-second penalty. The second time that happens, it's a 1-minute releasable penalty. Coach is not allowed to obstruct play. This is another releasable penalty. Again, we don't want to penalize the team for what the coach did. And then finally, we have ejection. Striking or attempting to strike anyone. So throwing a punch, whether or not the punch lands doesn't matter. Leaving the bench during a fight, this one's a little more challenging. If a coach runs on the field, grabs his player and pulls him off, I don't have a problem with that. If a bunch of people get all fired up because they think a fight's about to break out and they step onto the field, but they don't get engaged, I'm not tossing those people out, right? If you run out on the field and engage in the fight, you're going to get ejected. Tobacco use by coaches, players. I have had to send coaches off the field for chewing tobacco. Second, non-releasable unsportsmanlike, you're automatically ejected. And then the old flagrant misconduct, whatever we think is the worst thing you can do is clearly the worst thing you can do. Here's an example of fighting. I mean, that's kind of clearly fighting here, right? The white player does nothing. Okay. What I want you all to watch is watch this official come in and watch his partner, and they are focused on each other, and he's talking to this blue player, and yet suddenly the blue player and the white players are all getting into it off to their right. The most important thing you need to do right here is separate mixed colors. We can figure out what the foul was later. Blue is going to get ejected for throwing a punch, right? Look, it's still going on off to the right, and they're just starting to figure it out. You cannot be that guy. You've got to get in there to make sure you end it. Here's another ejection foul. Again, the film's terrible, but my buddy Gordon Corsetti used to say, if you see something that makes you go, ooh, and think somebody should do something about that, that person is you. This is where we need to have a flag. And early on in your career, just throw your flag. We will figure out what we need to do later. Okay? But you need to get used to identifying fouls, right? We call it foul recognition in the officiating world. And you got to get used to throwing your flag. You can't just be like, I saw that, but I didn't. You've got to do both. And it's hard. Processing all this at speed is very difficult. Here's an example, not of, that's a push from behind, right? It is this play where a coach throws a punch at the player that we need to now eject a coach, right? If you do eject a coach, it's a 1 minute non-releasable penalty. We do not want to punish the kids for what the coach did, but that coach needs to leave the facility. If you eject a player or a substitute or a non-playing team member, they have to leave if there is somebody, for example, the bus driver can watch them on the bus. But if nobody's available to do that, they are confined to the bench area, and I tend to make them take their jersey off so that I know that they're not coming back in the game. Like I said, if you get one of these big things, you want to make sure that you let people know what is going on, so that we can make sure that the assigners are ready for the phone calls and the emails that they're about to get. Whether it's a disqualification, whether it is a ejection, whether it's an injury, anything big, anything out of the ordinary, we want to make sure we're first calling our assigner, and then we can walk you through filling out the incident report, right? So you may be the R on a youth game. You will fill out this incident report so that we have a record. And if you don't know what to write or you don't know what to do, just call me, okay? All righty, I'm going to stop my share really quickly. Okay, so. So that is the big deal here. And what I want to make sure that we understand is, let me get you guys over here. There's a lot going on there, right? Jim Carbonneau has a wonderful expression. Lacrosse is a gentleman's game played by rogues. So it is physical and it is rough, and lacrosse players are tough SOBs, and you have to be willing to see that stuff happen. Okay, so make sure that you are watching film and talking to people and in the rule book so that you get a sense of, okay, that could be this, and you begin to develop that foul recognition. All right, it is 8:48. I'm going to start. Well, you know what I'll do? Uh, I will have the presentation on technical fouls. You guys just watch that on your own. Because again, I want to be respectful of your time. I've been trying to add video clips in. I probably think I need to remove some of these video clips so that it's a little better in terms of time management. But the personal fouls are the big one. We'll have a really, well, let me think about it. I'll send you guys an email tomorrow with this recording. Just do what's on the homework right now, which, as I recall, is see, rookie training plan. So right now we've got for our next, we have pregame responsibilities. Watch pregame responsibilities. Well, actually, I don't have any homework for you. Okay, I'm going to put technical fouls into the homework. You guys can watch that video, and we will discuss that when you guys get back for our next call next Tuesday. So you just have one video to watch. Please register with Dragonfly. Please make sure that you'll need to set up a NFHS account. Do not pay for anything on the Federation. Use the same email that you're using for your Dragonfly account. Because once everything gets processed, basically Dragonfly will tell the Federation that you are now eligible for an electronic rule book. Okay. And for those of you who do not have a rule book, I will be reaching out to you to see what the easiest way is to get your hard copy. We'll be sending the ones to Savannah. We'll be mailing those to Chris Ferran so you can get a rule book from them, Savannah guys. Everybody else will have to kind of go through me, and we'll either figure out that I can mail it to you or drop it off at your house. So we'll take care of all that stuff. Watch technical fouls, register with Dragonfly, and send me questions if you got them. Mr. Coney, hold on for a second. I need to get some information from you just for registration purposes. But everybody else, if you don't have any questions, thank you very much for your time and your focus. I know
There's
that was a lot of
two
stuff.
questions in the chat.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hold on. What do we got here? Defensive midi clearing the ball, attacking is on the ride, continually slapping at the midi. It is not effective nor particularly violent. Is the repeated slap enough to call a slash? The first one, what you will hear me say is easy. The second one, I will say, watch it. The third one, I'm throwing a flag, right? And I use my scary man voice. I like to tell everybody that I use my scary man voice. And so when I walk number 38 over and his, and I say 38 white slash, his coach will be like, he told you twice to stop doing it. Right? Again, this is a situation that backslash, the first thing that comes to my mind is, do you have reasonable access to a player's cross? If it's not reasonable access, my bar for what I'm going to allow drops a little bit. Now, if it's a high-level game, it's a one-goal game, it's a playoff game, maybe I warn him and I say, you do that again and I'm throwing a flag, right? But again, there's a lot of factors that go into it, okay? But the thing that I'm processing is, are you actually trying to get the ball? Or are you mad that you just got beaten on the ride? That backslash happens a lot, and you see that flag come. So where's your, what else have you called in the game? If you've been letting physical contact go, that kind of swipe against the back may not be enough for me to throw a flag. I'm probably going to say something, but it's probably not enough. What's the temperature of the game? Has this team gotten really chippy? They're getting their ass kicked, and you're worried about it starting to blow up and it's sort of 17-1. Maybe it's time to clamp down. Maybe now that has met my bar for what a slash is. So there's a lot that you process. And this is what, I know guys see us get together at midfield and you think we're deciding what chicken wing order we're going to have when we go to the bar afterwards. What I'm asking is, what did you call? What didn't you call? What did you say to number 32? What is that coach complaining about? I want all that information so that we can process what we need to do when we get out on the field.
Like on that same, on the slash, did you say that they didn't have to make contact for a slash to be called?
In the rule, it says contact is not required. I have never in 26 years called a slash in a high school game where contact was not made.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you run up and you swing at a player's head and you're not trying to get that, to me, that's a different thing altogether, right? In a youth game, I have called a slash on a kid who was clearly out of control. And it was, one-handed, all that. That's kind of why they put the one-handed rule into youth, to kind of avoid that situation. But I have never thrown a flag for missing a guy.
Yeah.
And and every once in a while, you'll get a coach or a parent who says, it says you don't have to make contact. I'm telling you, that's a pretty important part of the justification for calling a slash, right? I'll see a guy where, you whack him and you get a little bit of the arm and a little bit of the gloved hand. And I'll be like, easy, 48. And if he just keeps doing it, I throw my flag and I'm walking him over and I say, coach, I told him. Now, you don't want to say things like get stick, because you've just told people that you didn't.
how to play.
right? For me, it's that it hit the glove, it hit the stick, but it also hit a part of the body where you're not. But now we're right at that bar of like, I don't like where this is going. So I will warn you, right? I don't have to warn you. There are games where I'm like, nope, right? This is getting out of control, or I don't, oftentimes that's because I don't trust the level of skill of the players, right? And if I allow this to go on, it's going to go sideways really quickly. So, again, temperature of the game, level of players, skill, physical ability, importance of the game, right? If we're in the round robin of the Tiny Tots versus the Mighty Mots summer tournament and guys are beating the snot out of each other, like I'm probably clamping down pretty seriously, right? If we're in the state championship game, my level of what I'm going to allow based upon the importance, skill level, ability, all of those things is going to be higher, right? And the other thing I'll mention, and then I'll let you guys go, is every single thing is different. Every game is different. Coaches will say, well, last week that was a slash. Well, last week it was 24-2, right? This week, this day, this game, this is what we are allowing to play. And you'll have games where literally it's going swimmingly. Nobody's really beating the hell out of each other and nobody's really slashing. And it's just kind of it's skill and it's ball movement. And then out of nowhere, you have just a devastating play. And again, now you're thinking, good God, like nothing has happened and this has just come out of nowhere. What are we going to do? Right? And if it's so out of what has been allowed to happen, you kind of got to start a little higher. You're not probably going to go 1 minute illegal body check or a 1 minute slash. You're probably going to escalate, right? So these are the conversations you have. This is where the beauty of film comes in because literally every game in the state of Georgia is on huddle. And I will tell you, when you get in that car after you've had the big hit, some parent has already sent video or a coach has sent video to the assigners or to me. That basically comes to me. So we know instantly what has happened, right? And we never make it, we never respond until we've watched the entire game and we've talked to all the officials and coaches and everybody involved. So we don't rashly make a decision and say, how could you not have? I will not just watch a clip of a game if a coach sends it to me. We will have multiple people watch the entire game and write up an entire report with rule references to say, this is what happened and we are okay with this, or this is what should have happened and we screwed this up. Right. And we've brought it up with the officials because this is how you learn. Like you're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw things up. We don't like doing it, but it happens. We are human. But the way, one of my favorite quotes is a Dean Martin quote. Wisdom comes from experience and experience comes from mistakes. So the only way you get better at this is by screwing up. And hopefully some of these videos and stories that I tell you, you can sort of put in your memory banks and you won't screw up the stuff that I'm talking about. You'd be like, Greg talked about this and I don't want to go down that path. So again, if you got questions, let me know. It is 9 o'clock. Thank you very much for joining. Anybody else got anything?
Hey, Greg, I have one quick
What do you
question.
got?
I'm on Dragonfly. I was
Mhm.
trying to register.
Yeah.
So I'm already registered with GHSA in football and lacrosse, but I don't see where I see the association.
I will quickly send you a link and it will show you how to do that if you are already a member of an association.
Okay, thank you.
Just look for an email really like in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Cool. Yeah.
Greg, at one point you had said you would warn a player twice without a mouthpiece. Did you mean he has the mouthpiece and he's not
Different
wearing
plays.
it?
So in that particular situation, repeatedly committing the same technical foul, I'm talking about a player coming onto the field as a substitute who is not properly equipped.
Right.
So I've said, hey, 35, you don't have a mouthpiece, get off. And he comes back on the next play and he doesn't have a mouthpiece. Off the field. Now, 90% of the time, you know, 35 turns around and the coach is like, what the hell? I told you to go in. And he goes, oh, my mouthpiece is in my bag. And the coach is like, what the hell, Billy? Like you're an idiot. And they take care of it, right? They tell him to go sit down and he can't play until the coach isn't mad at him anymore. But if he comes back again and he doesn't have a mouthpiece, or my favorite, your mouthpiece is in the top of your helmet.
Yeah.
That didn't come out as an active play. Let's just put it that way. That came out because you didn't put it in. So in that case, I can say, hey, I've told you literally every time you came on the field to get off the field, and I'm not going to take it anymore. The other example, and the only other time, like these are really the only two times I've ever used this foul, is a player who's facing off and he's losing the face-off and he keeps going early. So he is every face-off, he's jumping early. And again, that disadvantages the face-off team because what do they want? They want a fast break. They want to pop that ball out, go down the field and get an unsettled situation and score a goal. And if you violate, now we stop the play, the defense gets to set up and we're playing 6-on-6. That's not what we want to have happen on a face-off. So if you do that over and over and over again, I'll throw the flag for a 1 minute releasable, right? So if they score, everybody just comes back in. We're playing even. So those are the only two examples that really come to mind in all the years that I've been doing this. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, goalies are the worst not to wear their mouthpieces, right? So, all right, guys, thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of your evening, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, good night, guys.